Mitt, welcome, and thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Mike. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today and see where it goes.
Likewise, and yeah, look, we've got lots to talk about, I think, and obviously we've got a few things to celebrate as well, which we'll come to. But so yeah, by way of an introduction, you're founder and CEO at Assurix. But for those perhaps that haven't come across Assurix, why don't you just kick off a bit of an introduction to yourself? Tell us who you are and what it was that you set out to build.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mitt Patel. I used to own a IT company similar to Team Metalogic for about 20 years, based down in London. I left that company about 5 years ago, and really I'll tell you a bit about how Assurix was founded or where the idea came from. I think that's quite interesting. So um, the first thing that happened really was I was lucky enough to get a non-exec position for a small IT company down in London. And I was sitting in one of their board meetings and they were explaining to me about how they took on a new client from another IT provider. And some of the things they were telling me about this new client they took on, I was a bit shocked about, not about the client, but the handover from the old MSP. So for the people who aren't sort of IT geeks like me and you, Mike, maybe we're not geeks, but we're in IT, right? Um, there were things like the local admin password being welcome123. So what that is for the listeners who aren't too IT, who don't have that much IT knowledge, it's basically a username and password that allows you to log on to the device when you're in front of it. So in this case, the password was welcome123 for all the machines in this client. And as we all know, we imagine most listeners have done some type of cyber training. Welcome123 isn't secure, and that client was also paying for stuff like backup and patching, and it wasn't actually happening. And the company that I was non-exec found this all out when they were going through their onboarding process to take on this client. So I was like, wow, I can't believe, it's that bad out there. The second thing that happened really around the idea of Assurix was that there is a new regulation coming out, and this is a cyber resilience bill, and the MSPs are and we'll talk about this later, I suppose. MSPs are going to be caught up in this regulation. So I thought that's interesting because there's this new security framework that they have to comply to. And then the third thing really was that I was having a conversation with someone who used to work for me 10 years ago, and they were telling me about that they were stuck in their business and could I help them out? And I was like, sure, I'm more than happy to, you know, help you figure out how to grow or whatever it may be. So we spent like 2 hours together. And one of the things I noticed on their website was they had an ISO certification, ISO 27001. Um, and this is only like a four-person business. So I was asking like, how did you get that certificate? Because when I ran my IT company, which was called Netstar, I think we spent something like 180 hours implementing it, something like £30,000 worth of cost. And it turned out that this person had paid someone a very small amount of money, £500, to give them all the documentation they needed. And then they got someone to certify them for a couple of £1,000s. So it was a bit of a shocking story, and those three things kind of made me think that actually the industry that we're in needs a change. And I think one thing I will point out is that there are loads of great IT providers out there. There really are, but I think the reputation in the industry gets ruined by the ones that aren't doing the things they should be.
Definitely, yeah. And those three reasons actually are really interesting. Like the thing you said there about the handovers and stuff like that, and that I think I've definitely experienced that over the years when we receive handovers from incumbent MSPs. But inevitably, there's a reason why somebody leaves their MSP or looks for another one, and it might well be just that they're looking for a lower cost or something like that. But usually, it's value driven, or it's trust or relationships that break down. And the one thing that I think is quite common in all of that is that there's very often not little smoke without fire, and you'll get somebody has a feeling to leave an MSP, and then they come across to us, and then you start to uncover lots of those rocks, and whether it's patching or whether it's actually basic security principles, and you really start to pick up all that stuff. And you're absolutely right, that is what then leads on to us having a bad reputation, because you end up with an industry with very little trust in. And that lack of regulation is the one that really, I think, sparks my interest. It certainly sparked it in what you guys were doing with Assurix, and how, for us as an industry, definitely, I think regulation is massively overdue. And I think it's this huge problem that just lives in plain sight that everyone overlooks, isn't it? And it really does matter, because nobody will hire a gas engineer without making sure that they've got a Kogi certificate, and nobody will look at getting an accountant to give them professional advice for their finances without making sure that maybe they're chartered or they've got the right letters after their names. But anybody can be an MSP. I mean, I did it. It was, 23 years ago. I mean, granted, that maybe being pre-cybersecurity issue.
Yeah.
But 23 years ago, I just thought, well, I can't get a job. I know, I'll do IT support. And before you knew it, you're an MSP. So yeah, and I think that is the big risk then, and I've done lots of talks about this and done webinars on it, where, from a supply chain assurance perspective, that is the problem. You hand over those AAA access all areas passes to somebody and just assume that they A, know what they're doing, and B, will do the right thing by your business all of the time.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think back to anyone could be an MSP. Someone described it to me the other day that someone who's just set up a router in their nan's house can now be an MSP because they're really qualified. And I think you're right. Like, the first thing is really that the industry is not regulated, so anyone can be an MSP. I think that the other problem is really around how people currently choose MSPs. So I call this like what's visible versus what's invisible. So what generally happens is you choose an MSP, or the service you experience from an MSP is all based on visible stuff. So do they answer the phone? Do they reply to tickets on time? Do they set up your machine when it needs to be done? And that's one part of the service, but not the most valuable part of the service. And most MSPs get that right. The second things are really the things that are invisible, like, are they backing up your all your data? Do they actually do the patching? Are all the security tools that they've said are in place in place? It's all those things that you just wouldn't know as an SME, because you're putting that trust and faith into your IT provider to do that, really. And to echo your point, like, generally speaking, an SME gives access to everything when it comes to your IT provider. You give them access to your files, your backups, your emails, the security tools you're using. Some MSPs even have keys to your office. So it's actually probably one of the most important decisions that you're making with a supplier. Yet a lot of these times, those decisions aren't made in the right way. And I think when it comes down to it, what I've seen a lot happen is, unfortunately, because most MSPs sound similar to small businesses, because you don't really understand how to decipher what's been said. They all say similar things like, we're proactive and we're secure and we do this and we do that. Ultimately, when someone gets like 3 or 4 quotes, they end up looking at it and thinking, well, it's going to be a £30 a user a month or a £20 a user a month, instead of choosing the right provider, because you're basing everything on the stuff that's visible, not the stuff that you really need done that's invisible to stop that trust being broken. And
Completely.
often it's that moment when it's too late, when something does go wrong, that you wish you had chosen someone that, you know, does do both sides, the visible and the invisible, really well.
Yeah. And I think what I've seen certainly is that the visible stuff is still important. And look, we still do it. We still talk about time to respond and time to resolve, and how long we take to answer the phone, and what our SLA percentage is, and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's really important. It is still important, because responsiveness and things like that matter to people. But that invisible stuff is the outcomes based stuff, really, as opposed to the ticket based, I've got a problem. And that's where I think our industry is evolving a lot, and lots are not keeping up with it. And it's look, we're on the cusp of big change with AI and with how the industry is moving anyway. And we've got a digitally native workforce now, which we're not teaching people to learn how to use a PC anymore, how to get on the internet anymore. All this stuff is second nature. But as a result of that, people are much more self-sufficient and will be more autonomous in fixing their own problems. And so I think the evolution of the MSP now is one that is outcomes based as opposed to ticketing based, or I'm going to charge you based on how many people I support or how many devices I support or how much time or tickets we spend. It's about, is the outcome that this business is cyber resilient? Is the outcome that this business has good redundancy? Is the outcome that this business has great continuity planning? Is it that they're adopting AI safely and with guardrails in place? Those are the outcomes, I think, that have a value now, as opposed to, yes, we can solve 20 tickets for you with a time to resolve of X minutes, etc. And I think that kind of all swings round a bit, doesn't it, to why Assurix exists and how it works? Because we talked about ISO as all MSPs look the same. And I think very few, maybe only the larger MSPs certainly will have things like ISO 27001. But most of us, if not all of us, should have something like Cyber Essentials, which is a great grounding, a great baseline to show that, the MSPs take cybersecurity seriously, at least. But Assurix, what interested me most about it was that was the real opportunity for us to have a differentiator and appear different to the other MSPs that we might be competing with. And I mean, I think it'd be good just to touch on how it works, how the framework,
Sure.
how the certification, how the assessment is different to the things that we will have done previously.
Yeah. So what Assurix is a live evidence trust mark for IT providers. And essentially, it provides proof of two things. One, that a IT provider is secure based on the government's cybersecurity framework. And the second thing is that that MSP is going to deliver good outcomes because they're operationally mature. And if you think of it like this, because we've touched on some of these things, even around SLAs and stuff like that. So one of the things we do is we have these two frameworks, but then we actually integrate into the tool set that an IT provider uses. So we integrated into their service ticket software, the stuff that actually patches all their machines, and other security tools like backups, etc., etc. And because we integrate live into them, we're able to prove that an MSP or an IT provider is doing all the things that they should be doing every day, as opposed to a once a year audit. So I generally see is like MSPs and IT providers, especially in the sales cycle or whatever it may be, say a lot of stuff to SMBs that is hard to either A, understand, or maybe they're not really sure is that real or not. So they talk about, we deliver our service levels within X. We are proactive. We are secure. So what we actually do in Assurix is we're able to prove those things. So if an MSP is saying that my response time is X, well, we can prove that. If their SLA is Y, we can prove that. And we basically have a standard that an MSP or IT provider has to adhere to in order to get our trust mark. And that standard, if something slips within an MSP, can be revoked as well. We generally give an MSP 30 days to fix something that's gone wrong, where they've missed a control or done something. But if they don't fix it within that time period, we suspend our trust mark. So the idea for the end SMB or SME customer is that if they see a IT provider that has our trust mark, they know that they're going to be able to deliver. Not only are they going to be secure, but they're going to be able to deliver so that they get a good outcome. And it can be small things. It's stuff like, do they have a escalation process? The amount of times I hear by friends who own SMEs say that, look, I've got this problem. I've been stuck with it for 3 days. I don't know who to go to within this IT company anymore. I've spoken to this person and that person, and I'm just kind of stuck. It's those types of frustrating things that you don't have to worry about with somebody that has the Assurix trust mark, as well as knowing that they are going to be secure themselves and treat your security seriously.
And I think that's a really good point, that last one, actually. But I think, look, we're often trusted to keep the businesses that we support secure. But we're asking everyone just to assume that we are ourselves secure and in a position to be able to do that. And it's almost like we mark our own homework, don't we? And now we're not. You're marking it for us and being quite rigid in your marking criteria.
Yeah, I mean, we are very rigid in our marking marking criteria because ultimately, um, it's our reputation on the stakes every single time that we are keeping someone's trust mark lit green. So we're very rigid, and I think the difference of doing it continuously versus point in time, so once a year, like stuff like ISO, stuff like Cyber Essentials, is it doesn't really tell you if that provider is doing what they should be doing. If you think of it like like an MOT or food standards, right? You see the score on the door for food standards and you assume that, it's going to be good hygiene in there. But that was on the day they got checked, not day 100 when who knows what could have happened in the kitchen.
In the instance of food hygiene, I think a lot happens after the
Yeah.
but I've been for some questionable takeaways with a 4 or 5 on the door, I think. But yeah, and I look, that point in time thing. Look, we see it as well when we're doing things like Cyber Essentials for customers, and I've been saying it for 5 years, if not longer. But Cyber Essentials is only effective if it's a mindset in the business, not a point in time thing. And it's so many times do we get, look, we've got to get Cyber Essentials by the end of the month so we can submit a tender. And that's such the wrong reason for trying to get Cyber Essentials. But also, even if they've got to do it for that purpose, you're paying for it. So it might as well have some value to your business by making it more cyber resilient for the months and the years that follow. And the same thing, I think, stands for the Assurix piece on a continuous basis. And that is, if we were marking our own homework, it's so easy just to say, perhaps, well, look, we want to align with this piece of the CAF framework or the NCSC guidance or Cyber Essentials, whatever it might be. And we know we kind of do it and we're really close, but we probably could do a bit more, but we've got enough to say that we're doing it. And that's okay when it isn't really. And also, you'll put these things in place to get you through that point in time. And then everybody's put all that effort in to get you there. And a month later, business as usual or day-to-day ops takes over. And all of a sudden, some of those standards start to slip, which can't happen when we've got this continuous piece with Assurix. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is it every 6 hours that
It's every 6 hours, yeah. So every 6 hours we're polling that data. Where I've seen actually an interesting point to make actually is really in the insurance industry. So a lot of times, as a business, you get all sorts of insurance, whether it's professional indemnity or cyber cover, or even employers' public liability. Now, some of these insurance policies actually ask you to do certain things in their terms and conditions. And that could be stuff like having backups that are done on a daily basis of your data. It could be stuff like making sure that you have MFA on, so multi-factor authentication on your user logins. A lot of people don't really read into those sometimes. And there's two sides of the coin here. One, obviously, the MSP needs to be doing that, of course, at a minimum. But also, if you're an SME business, you should be doing those things anyway. But a lot of the times you're relying on your MSP to say they're doing those things. And I've seen a few cases now where there have been some incidents and insurance claims that have been rejected now because people who thought they were doing those things weren't doing it.
And it's now quite commonplace. We see this with cyber claims and things all the time, that insurers just pull their cover because you haven't done basic things. And even for us as an MSP, we've got a long list of insuring clauses that we have to abide by to make sure that we're doing some of this stuff as part of it. And the Assurix piece helps us to have that reassurance that we are doing these things regularly, because if they slipped, we'd know they slipped, as opposed to it just got going under the radar internally. And I think that's one of the big reasons, I think, why we chose to get verified. I could say get verified now, can't I? Because we've done it.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled. So we met back in October last year, and there was talk about, we could potentially be one of the founding 50 to achieve Assurix. And to me, that was a huge differentiator. And that was one of the driving reasons as to why we should do this because we're in quite a saturated market, and like you said, most MSPs are the same, and we'll be competing against other MSPs that are talking the same talk that we're talking. We may know, from taking handovers from them when we win the business, that they might not walk that walk all of the time, if not most of the time, but we're all talking the same talk, certainly. So that was a key driver, but also, there's one thing, everyone's got that one thing that keeps you up at night, and 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 us being breached, or us being an entry point to attack, is that one thing that would always keep me up at night. And it was, again, I've talked about this loads, but it's about, if you're going to rob a hotel, don't grab a key card off a guest, grab a key card off housekeeping. And we are the housekeeping for businesses across Wales, across the UK. We are the housekeeping for businesses with 5-10 staff, and for businesses with 500 and 1,000 staff, for businesses with £50,000 a year turnover, and for businesses with £50 million a year turnover. That's a big risk pool that we're working in. And the thing that would keep me awake at night, and the thing that would keep me worried, would be, what if? And we all know that we keep saying, don't we? It's not if, it's when. Everyone's going to get an attack at some time, but we absolutely, as the MSP, have to be leading from the front on all this stuff, and absolutely walking the walk and setting the standard for everybody else to follow. And so that was why I was so excited about what you guys were doing. And yes, we embarked on that, and we were the first one in Wales to achieve this back in June, and we're one of the first 4, let alone the first 50 in the UK, which was incredibly a proud moment for me and the team here. But what I will say, I think, is that we've been going for 23 years, and I would honestly consider us to be quite operationally mature. But even I was surprised by some of the things that had room for improvement in us doing this. And nobody's going to walk into this thinking they're perfect and infallible by any means, are they? But it really makes you consider and ask questions internally about how we're operating and how we do things. Lots of the time, it was great. It was great reassurance, and it was great to know, do you know what? We've been doing that right all along, and now somebody else is validating that for us, and that's brilliant. But also to find those little gaps, because it's those little gaps are the things that were keeping me awake at night. It's those little gaps that were making me think, well, what is it that you don't know about? What is it that we could improve on, or we've got room to improve on? And now knowing that we're doing that, not just once a year, but every single day, every 6 hours, these things are being reassessed. That is the real value in that for me in getting Assurix.
Yeah, and I think there are small, let's talk about the weirdest thing that we probably measure, which people will be saying, well, why do you measure that? So one of the weirdest things that I don't think it's weird, but we measure employee satisfaction, right? So are you doing an employee satisfaction survey on a regular cadence? And I actually had another IT business owner come up to me at an event in Prague the other day, and he was like, "Mate, just want to talk to you about, because they're going through the process. They haven't got the trust mark like yourselves yet. They're going through the process." And he was like, "I did this employee satisfaction thing, and I thought everyone was happy." And he turned around and he goes, "Why do you measure that?" I said, "Well, the reason that we measure employee satisfaction is that I know that if you have happy people in your organization, that the maturity of your organization and the service you deliver is going to be better. And the person using that service is going to get better outcome. And that's why you need to be aware at all times what's going on." And he was like, since I actually went through that process of going and doing a employee satisfaction survey, it's actually made a big change for me in some of the stuff that we do. And you're right, like it's no business is going to be perfect always, but as long as you can see what those gaps are and are able to work on them to get to a good state, then that's where you want to be at.
And I think it seems like common sense. Maybe it's not, but the biggest driver for our success are the team of people that deliver it. And if the team of people are happy, then it seems only logical that they will care more, and they'll take more more diligence in what they're doing, and they won't try and cut corners. They'll want to do things properly all the time. And yeah, and look, I see huge benefit in that. And culture has always been a massive thing to me personally. It's always been really important as I've built what we've done here, is that you do it with culture at the forefront of it. I think, look, that was, we talked about why I and we at Team Metalogic did it, but what about to the SME itself? Like what should it mean to them? I guess what do they stand to gain from it? Obviously, we've talked about that proof not promises piece about actually being able to prove what you say that you're doing. Maybe their argument is, well, we shouldn't be in business if we can't do that in the first place. But for them as an absolute piece of reassurance, or as a reason for choosing an MSP, yeah, what would it mean to the SME that was in the market for a managed services provider?
I think I'll tell you a story, strange one. So I met this guy at Wingfest in London, which is like a chicken wing festival, and he happened to be wearing the same T-shirt that I was wearing. And after my kind of sixth chicken wing, I went over to this guy and I said, "Hi, how you doing? We've got the same T-shirt." Turns out his wife chose his T-shirt, and funnily enough, my wife chose my T-shirt as well. So we were both talking, and this guy actually owns a firm that does hoists. So these are, when you're constructing a massive building, you have a hoist that goes, it's like a lift, makeshift lift that carries heavy stuff. And we got talking over a drink, and he asked me what I did, and I explained to him, and he goes, "No way." He goes, "I've gone through 3 MSPs in 1 year." I was like, "What? Are you sure? 3 MSPs in 1 year?" And I was like, "Why did you go?" So I was explaining to him about Assurix and what we do and how we do it. And his challenge was, he just, when he's speaking to an IT provider, he just doesn't know which one to choose. And the reason he's gone through these different sets of IT providers is, the first time was they weren't getting the service that they were meant to be getting. The second time, unfortunately, he had a security incident that I won't go into too much details, because I might post this on LinkedIn and put a picture of us on there. And then the third occasion, the MSP actually went bust. So he's had a right run of situations with all these different MSPs. And he said, if I had assurance that an MSP is actually going to do good things for my business and deliver the stuff they say they're going to deliver, that would have made it an easy choice for me. But because I don't really have any way of understanding, are these IT providers going to do what they say they're going to do, it's been a real challenge for me. So he took down the website and took down my number, and he goes, "Hopefully nothing will happen with the next one." I said, "Look, tell him to get the Assurix Trust Mark, and at least you can know that they are doing what they say they should be doing." So I think it's real peace of mind for a buyer that actually they know that the person that's looking after their IT is getting continuously checked every day, right? That's the real peace of mind, and that they're not going to turn bad in 3 months' time or 6 months' time when they grow, expand, or maybe get sold and get rolled up into something. So I think
Some of that
that's the
commercial
piece.
risk angle, I guess, isn't it? That they're protecting against, or they're trying to mitigate against the commercial risk of entering into a quite intertwined relationship with a new supplier that at that moment in time is completely unknown or untrusted to them.
Yeah, and I think you probably heard the saying, like, the better the devil you know. It takes a lot for someone to switch an IT provider.
Yeah.
And these are the general things that I see. Um, poor service, um, not getting value for money, or unclear billing sometimes, or not understanding what they're doing. Some type of incident, whether that's can't restore a file, down to having some type of cyber incident. Um, Not really knowing who to go to in an MSP, so not having any main point of contact in an MSP. And sometimes they think it's down to price, because it's ramped up into value as well, because they're not sure, like, why are they paying this much money when someone else can do it for half the money. Now, we both know that generally there's an amount you have to charge to survive as a business and make a margin. And when you aren't charging the right amount, corners get cut and you don't do all the invisible things that we were talking about earlier. So with the Assurix Trust Mark, what you can actually prove is like service, where we're checking your response times, your CSATs, so you know you're delivering service to a standard. When it comes to stuff like incidents happening, we're able to reduce those incidents because the MSP or the IT providers actually got a security framework that they're following and getting assessed on continuously as well. And just talking about risk in general, when we hear stuff like supply chain risk, coming back to my earlier point, like the biggest supply chain risk for a business if they outsource their IT is their IT provider, because you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like IT providers have got systems that have access to multiple clients of theirs, so there's an aggregation risk that happens there.
Yeah, and you just touched on a really good one that I have a conversation about this all the time, and it's that real cost of buying this service on price alone. And if that, we see some competitive quotes for managed services that we might go up against, and I can just walk away from them because I say, well, look, that we're never going to compete with that low price, but I can guarantee you that the level of operational maturity that we've got, or the level of tooling that we've got to make sure that not only you but we remain as secure and cyber resilient as possible, is not going to be possible in that business when they're charging you that lower price per user or per device, etc. And there's a real cost to that, because that is the point where the gaps exist. That is the point where corners get cut, and that's the point where risk really opens up again, isn't it? And that whole supply chain piece, again, that's it, a nice segue into that cybersecurity and resilience bill, but that's going to put the obligation on businesses to start to really question their supply chain, and rightly so. I think we do it with ours. Every business that we work with has to get verified, obviously, from a supply chain perspective and a diligence, but also in terms of how they look after data and what they do with the data and what choices they make as a business in terms of their own cybersecurity and resilience, because the choices that they make will impact us and in turn, potentially, our clients and partners.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about supply chain, just to kind of explain what that is, but a lot of risks nowadays come not from only your people internally in your business that could click on something or download something or enter their username and password somewhere they shouldn't be, but they also come from the people you use as suppliers. So if they have access in some way to you, whether that's via email or whether that's via some system you're using of theirs or whatever it may be. Now, there's been a huge increase in the amount of supply chain attacks that are happening. You may have heard about supply chain attacks via, the Jaguar Land Rover stuff and, M&S, when there was no kind of cheese onion sandwiches left on the shelves back then. That was through their supply chain. So that's why it's really important to think about, who is in your supply chain. And I think the point you were going to go down was really around the cyber resilience bill, right? Around, what the government have deemed is that there are a bunch of organizations that live within critical national infrastructure, stuff like power stations, stuff like the NHS, maybe that are critical for the nation to keep on working. But they've decided to put MSPs in that scope now, so IT providers in that scope. It's starting with the largest IT providers first, so like 50 employees upwards, but then it will whittle down to the rest of those other smaller providers over time. What they're basically wanting people to do is to align to a framework which is called the Cyber Assessment Framework, which really gives the right type of governance and security a business should have. And I think that's a big change, right? At the moment, it's like all things in government, takes a bit of time to get through. We've been talking about it for 3 or 4 years, but now it's the bill has passed through the House of Commons now. It's in the House of Lords. They're at kind of committee stage. So there's about 3 or 4 stages. Sorry, 2 stages left before it goes into final stage, which means that then it will eventually become law and people will have to start to comply. Um, Probably by the end of 2027 is when it will be into law. Maybe some of the changes in government recently, are making me say it's going to be 2027 as opposed to sooner than that. But I think it's a good thing for the economy on a whole and for the businesses that actually make up the economy, right? And a lot of them are small businesses.
Yeah.
There's millions
And
of.
and that's almost why I think that it needs that extension filtering down needs to happen fast. To some in some degree, like you talked about that business MSP that you work with that managed to get ISO 27001 just by paying a few £100 and getting it done. But the big businesses that will fall into scope of this will have spent £30,000 and upwards getting their ISO 27001 and making sure that processes are ingrained throughout the business. It's the small 1, 2, 5, 10 people businesses that don't have the resources internally to actually keep all this stuff where it needs to be, and they're probably the ones that need it the most. But yeah, I really hope that it happens sooner rather than later, and I'm excited to see what that brings to our industry in the next 12, 18 months. But let's go a bit further forward. I think I'm interested to know what you think. I mean, where do you see all of this in maybe 5 years' time? Do you think that the term unverified MSP is going to become as unthinkable as having no MOT on your car or having no insurance on your car? Or do you think it's going to be just that cream of the top that will be these verified MSPs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to come down to competitive pressure, right? Because ultimately, um, if you have an unverified MSP sitting in front of an SME trying to pitch for their IT for their IT outsourcing, and you've got a verified one, it's very easy to make a decision. You're making a decision based on these. There's an unverified MSP that says they're doing all these things, but actually no one can prove they're doing all these things, or a verified MSP that can prove and they have a third party independently checking every day. Generally speaking, when I have a conversation with SME and tell them the difference, they're going to choose the one that's got a lot less risk for them, right? And a lot less risk is having one that's independently verified every day. Like, why would you choose one that isn't? Because you're just hedging a bet. But like I said, there are loads of good providers out there. But the one way to get certainty is that if they are verified by Assurix.
I have to agree with that because we've seen it, haven't we, with Cyber Essentials? 10, 12 years ago, when that first came into fruition, it was needed for government and local authority tenders only. And that's why people had Cyber Essentials. But then as that filters down from government and local authorities to large enterprises, they then start to ask for Cyber Essentials as an indicator of resilience and good practice. And now that filters down, and everybody seems to be asking for Cyber Essentials as part of supply chain assurance, which is a brilliant thing. But these things just filter down, and that competitive piece kicks in, and you have to compete on a level playing field with the others. And so if they've all got Assurix, or they've all got some kind of live trust mark or validation verification of their standards and their operational maturity, that hopefully will light the spark for others to join in.
Yeah, I think so. I think just to not to harp on about point in time stuff, but you've probably taken on a new client from another MSP before, and that new client you've taken on may have had Cyber Essentials. I hear this quite a lot within the MSP community, and they're like, they shouldn't have had Cyber Essentials. I don't know how they got that in the first place because they're not doing anything to comply with all those things. And I think when it becomes a tick box exercise, which unfortunately in some cases it doesn't really prove that um, that company, that SME, should have Cyber Essentials. And I think that comes down to the beliefs of the provider that's certifying that, especially if it's an IT provider. If your customer's got Cyber Essentials, you have to keep them to have Cyber Essentials. It can't just be for that one day a year when they get tested.
Absolutely. It's exciting times. Yeah, I think that's at the moment, I'm very grateful to be in quite an elite club. I'm sure that won't be the case for long. So I'm gonna enjoy it whilst we can, and in holding that impressive, slightly difficult to get, a lot of evidence to give, but absolutely worth it. And certainly for us, it's a big thing. And we've certainly, we work in lots of regulated spaces, financial services, insurance, lots of compliance driven businesses. And I already know, even from just being on the journey with Assurix and talking about the fact that we were doing that, and even more so now that we've got that verification, that it's won us those pieces of business, which is brilliant. So thank you for that, and for enabling us as we've gone along, and look forward to speaking more and seeing what we can achieve with Assurix going forward. And for anybody that wants to know more about it, look, we've got a piece on our website, teammetalogic.com/Assurix, where our live verification is shown at all times with you guys, isn't it? And we've also got a bit of a scorecard on there where people can ask the questions of their MSPs or their providers in terms of are they ticking the right boxes? Certainly. But yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, great. No, thanks for having me on, and congratulations once again of getting verified.
Yeah, we're still celebrating. It's a year. It's like a milestone birthday. I think it goes on all year, doesn't it? So we'll ride the wave for as long as we can. Mate, thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Bye for now.